Hi there, this is Jonathan Shalar, once again with Christ Media, saying a big hello out there to the YouTubers. Now, this video is called The Harmony of the Gospels. Now, a lot of you fans out there have probably heard of a little book called the Bible. And I've heard many opinions about the Bible saying that it's a great book, it's a good book for teachings about life. It's a book of lies. I've heard people say that it's only just a book. But many people out there don't understand why professing Christians believe so strongly in this book called the Bible. No matter where you stand on your belief on what the Bible is, it's one of the most historical books ever presented to humankind. It's one of the most spiritual and fascinating books, and it's much debated about. I'm here to present to you the harmony of the Gospels, mainly just talking about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John today, and because those are the heart of the New Testament, and they show validity that I'm going to present to you that the Gospels was not just made up. Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, was not just an afterthought added in later by, written by men. Now, you've probably heard this opinion, the Bible is a good book, but it's just a bunch of stories made up by men. It was written by man, how can we trust in it? I'm going to present to you today that the Gospels, known as the book of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are not made up, but rather these were real people recording real events, but they were writing down biographies as they knew how to at the time. So very quickly here, let's talk about Matthew. Now, Matthew was a tax collector, and this is recorded in the early history of our church. Matthew, also known as Levi, he was the author of the book of Matthew. Well, that makes sense, right? He was one of Christ's original disciples. So, being that Matthew was with Jesus, his testimony in the book of Matthew is very valid and very powerful. Now, a lot of people look down on Matthew because he was a tax collector. Tax collectors were despised by the Jews as overcharging his fellow Jews. And so, what offended a lot of the religious elite, such as the Pharisees in Jesus' day or in Yeshua's day, what offended religious people was that Yeshua would reach out to somebody as unclean and unworthy as Matthew. He was an outcast of society, and he was an outcast in the synagogues. And yet, Yeshua Jesus included him into one of the 12 disciples, into his inner circle. It enraged the Pharisees, the religious elite, those who were self-righteous. Yet, Christ came to reach out to those who were bound, those who were broken by sin and the effects of sin and selfish living. And Jesus calls us to a life of wholeness and purpose in following him. That's what the whole premise of the history of Matthew's record is. Now, the entire Bible was written not in thousands of years, not in hundreds of years, but only in a matter of 25 years. As little as 25 years span of time, the whole of the gospel was finished and being recorded. And many people might not realize this, but Matthew quoted the Old Testament not once, not twice, 96 times. 96 times Matthew quoted the Old Testament. And a lot of people say, well, 96 times, he must have been someone that was brought up in the Torah, someone that was, going, that he had gone to synagogues and he was versed in all the feasts and festivals of the Lord. And yes, Matthew was a Jew of Jews, even though he was a tax collector. He was a Jew of Jews awaiting the Messiah. And that is the entire purpose of Matthew's account. Now, Matthew's record, or letter, if you will, was written between, archaeologists say, between the years of AD 50 and AD 75. It was only a span of 25 years. Took him a while to finish it, but 25 years nonetheless. What was the purpose of Matthew's gospel? Well, he wanted to show his fellow Jews that Yeshua, HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, was Emmanuel, God with us. And that was his whole purpose of writing his gospel account, to show that Christ would be with us even to the end of the age. Now, a lot of people out there might say, oh, that sounds all well and good, but, how can we believe any of this? Well, I present to you that the Bible is a historical record. Take Homer's The Iliad, or any of the other well-known historical writings, and many of them only have 11 manuscripts. If memory serves me correctly, I believe Homer's The Iliad had 96 manuscripts, and it's considered to be one of the most historically accurate documents in the world. The Iliad. But you may not realize this, but do you know how many manuscripts the Bible has to back up the New Testament alone? Over 40,000. That's right. Over 40,000 manuscripts were found over the ages, or letters, if you will, that have been copied. Different manuscripts to back up. The Bible is the most historically valid and accurate book on the face of the planet. According to the Iliad, 96 manuscripts alone would be sufficient enough to prove that the Bible is reliable, historical, valid. But these were not just historical accounts. They were testimonies of men, eyewitnesses to the miracles and the things that Yeshua, Jesus Christ, had done. What's left to be determined is, did these miracles really happen? Or were they just fancified by the authors? That is an article of faith.